From the mind of Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov.
So the morning after the pilot session, there's still so much to unpack here. But there's a couple things I wanted to talk about that I felt were really important. And first of all, people have asked, what microphone did they use on you? It was a TLM 170, which is everything that it has been advertised to be. It was just pure and perfect and beautiful. But the thing is, the TLM 170, I have a feeling. The microphone sounded like when I was sitting in the control room watching my fellow actors perform and listening to it through the monitors in this $1 million facility. I was just amazed by the stunning detail and realism, which I would expect at this level. And so the TLM 170, beautiful microphone. But, Joey F808 asked, he's like, hey, would be nice to see the UA model of a 170 for the Sphere. And I agree, that would be incredible. But I just have this feeling that the TLM 170 is a microphone that does not like unperfect spaces. They use it on orchestras and stuff. So I think you really have to have a finely tuned, you have to have a very premium recording environment to get the best out of it. Really, really finely tuned space. And I don't know if it would really work so well in the booth. And of course, there's a lot of post work that will happen to all this stuff that doesn't necessarily happen here. So, a 170 model would be amazing, but I don't know if a 170 would sound good anywhere other than like a really great room. So anyway, here's the other thing I wanted to talk about. So I had this great opportunity yesterday. After the session, I got a text later on from the casting director, and they're like, hey, we're meeting for drinks, so the showrunners, the casting director, and some of the actors. So met everybody in Burbank for drinks. And I have to tell you, it was so much fun, just hanging out. And we weren't just talking shop. We talked shop a little bit, but, talking about like all the crazy things that we all did as teenagers, all the nearly regrettable incidents as teenagers. And so it was a fun night. And of course, what happened was at some point, someone had brought up the topic of my auditions for my gig, the gig I won. And so this is what I wanted to talk about. Winning the gig. So what I did when I got the spec for the character, I looked at the script, and I was like, this is totally in my wheelhouse. So I spent some time developing 4 different auditions. So 4 completely different voices. And I did it over the course of a couple of days. I did some later at night when I had kind of a different, different texture to my voice. I did a couple of higher pitched ones and some more throaty ones. But what I did was all 4 auditions were slated, when you introduce yourself for an audition. So if I'm doing an audition, so if I was reading for, as a character called Jack, right? It'd be like Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov reading for Jack, right? That's what you say at the top. But I did all my slates. My character is not called Jack. So, but I did all my slates in different character voices than the character voice I was doing. So, I'd be like Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov reading for. So ultimately, what happened was they heard 4 different takes of the character, but they also heard 4 other character voices. They heard 8 total character voices from me, which I think overall inspired confidence in choosing me. And it ended up, I was the first person to audition for this gig. And this is the point I was going to make. So when I got the spec, I felt like this was something I could really nail, because I've already in my mind, I tinker with voices, and I already had like really a palette of character voices to draw from to inspire me to shape this other character. So I took this other character, all these characters have names in my mind. So I took a character that I have and I twisted it around and turned it into what won the job. But my point was being really prepared for anything, knowing what your character reads are where they're going to begin. So really working on these characters and living in these characters and kind of, I'll walk around the house and I'll talk in a character voice to myself, like, oh, time to make lunch now. And so I'm just constantly tinkering with voices. It's just the way I've always done it. And this way I feel comfortable when something comes in, I can really kind of blast it out. And even though I did take my time, being the first the first audition in for this character was huge because what happened was I planted the flag for this character. And what they told me, this was amazing. So they said that they listened to my audition and they were like, this can't be it. The first person to audition can't be the guy. But I left an indelible impression because a lot of focus and love went into this audition, like really feeling what the character, understanding the emotional impact of what all these lines that the character says means within the context of the script, capturing the essence of the character. And even though my audition character voice and the voice that I used in the pilot evolved, it began with something, the seed of it remained. And so having that seed in place and really going and digging deep into it and being able to emote with that was a function of living with this character voice or version of this character voice for a long time beforehand. But being the first audition in, right? So I was prepared to create this audition, and being the first audition in really set the tone because they said that every other audition they heard for the character, they were just like, it's not the first guy, it's not Mark. So really, my point here was that when you audition for anything, not just a character job, when you're auditioning for any sort of voiceover thing, understanding the emotional context of what it is that you're reading, whether it's just a commercial copy or a narration about, contact lenses. Understanding that and being able to deliver in a way that delivering right away, like immediately showing within the first 10 seconds that you understand the character is so important because you have to realize that anybody who's casting, especially for voice acting jobs, anybody who's casting this, first it goes through the casting director, and then the casting director is the gatekeeper who, if they like it, they pass it on to the producers. But everyone involved, right? There are a lot of people who have to sign off and agree that this person is the person for the job. So what you really have to do is you have to impress a lot of people, which means you have to be really, really in the pocket with your character, whatever your character is. Even, again, if it's just you're reading the part of the best friend in a commercial, best friend offering advice where to buy the best tires, right? So really having that in your heart and soul, like really knowing what your reads should sound like, where they should begin. Doing the homework is important because, you have these people, again, these decision makers are listening to a lot of different auditions possibly. And so if you can leave an indelible mark, if you can leave an imprint because you really feel it and they feel what you feel, then you stand a better chance of landing the gig. So I do feel that because I was able to draw from work that I had put in, woodshedding these voices, practicing different voices and different deliveries and different accents and stuff. Being prepared really set me up to land this job. So my point, I know it took me 10 minutes to get here, but my point is that if you are going to do voice acting, voiceover, anything, you really benefit. I'm not going to say you should, right? You really can benefit from spending a lot of time in your space, in your booth, in your room, wherever it is that you kind of tinker and workshop different iterations of what it is that you expect to be chasing. So even if you don't have anything like a project to work on, just start working on something that you think is relevant. What I did was I drilled down on every single line of this character's dialogue. And I was like, what are the variations? How do I make this sound like he's bored? How do I make this sound like he's interested? And a lot of times it's finding the emphasis on certain words, right? And I've done that before with copy, just like working around it. Like sometimes at night when I'm out with the dogs, I'll sit in the chaise lounge looking at the stars and thinking of like things that I would say in a voiceover, like a question, like, do you need a hemorrhoid donut? So and then trying to figure out a way to ask that or state these specific things in a way that conveys different emotions. So it's really understanding the breadth of your instrument and how to manipulate that to achieve different emotional responses from the people you are trying to elicit those responses from. So anyway, be prepared, put in the work, even if you feel like, what am I doing, right? The practice of getting on the microphone and just kind of working it and kind of understanding, like, maybe sometimes I need to be up here and sometimes I want to back off, really, really playing with the dynamics of it too helps make these characters or your reads come to life. So practice, practice, practice. That's what it comes down to. Whatever you do in life, if it's some kind of creative endeavor, don't just try to attempt it when it's time to attempt it. Go and put in your 10,000 hours or however many hours behind the scenes and be ready for anything. All right, nation? I want to know what you think. All right, until next time, this is Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov, fading to black.